Good evening, Geerup. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you back to YouTube after your prolonged self-imposed absence. I guess it's true what they say about it not mattering how many times you flush. Well, you're back, so pleasantries over with, we might as well get right down to business. I didn't bother responding to your last video because, well, I didn't really need to. In that video, you managed to refute your own argument all by yourself. What was it? Oh yeah, we can trust and rely on personal testimony, but there are of course those situations where people will lie, because they have a personal agenda, and so personal testimony is not trustworthy. Or something like that. I know I'm paraphrasing, but damn it, Geerup. Try and make sure that the argument that you start off with at the beginning isn't refuted by what you say at the end. It takes a certain talent for coming out with utter bollocks to be able to mutter complete twaddle and then debunk what you have just said immediately afterwards. But you somehow managed it, and you saved me quite a lot of effort. Sort of like self-shoveling horseshit. It's hardly surprising that you got such a negative response, but then again, given your track record, it would be more surprising if it was positive. Anyway, I'm going to try to respond to your latest video, and unlike my compatriots, I'm going to try really hard to do it without resorting to calling you a gibbering idiot, a vacuous cretin, a moron, intellectually deficient, educationally subpar, delusional and deluded, or just an outright fucking retard. Which we both know will be something that will come as a great disappointment to my viewers. But it's an effort that I'm willing to make. Just for you, Geerup, so that your eco feelings don't get hurt by the big bad nasty Englishman. I mean, come off it, pal. You know the score. You turn on the camera, you open your mouth, and you give life to something stupid, and we punish you for it. It's the way it's always been. It's the way it was a year ago, and it's the way it still is now. Why did you think it would be otherwise? The only good reason for your good friend Sean not getting buried under a mountain of derision since his return has much to do with his arch-nemesis Dr. Phil having moved on to other things, such as Muslims, as it is to do with his more recent mind farts being his own musings, rather than the warmed-over Kent-Hoving transcripts that he used to give us, and him generally not making any real sense. We tend to pity the poor boy, because we see that inevitable day, sometime in the future, when he asks his flock of sheep-like followers to forgive him after he's sent to jail for not paying his taxes. Or he's caught in the act, in a cheap motel room, snorting crystal meth out of the arse crack of a gay male prostitute while being blown by a Taiwanese midget riding a pig, like so many of his pious evangelical heroes. The videos that he puts out may be full of crap, but at least they're not deadly. I still remember the video that you posted which urged pregnant women with ectopic pregnancies to wait a while and think things over before getting an abortion. Yet you failed to point out that the most common form of ectopic pregnancy, as in 98% of the time, is when the fetus gets stuck in the fallopian tube, and that there has never been a single case where an ectopic pregnancy of this kind has been brought to term, because it causes the fallopian tube to rupture, which in most cases will prove fatal to the expectant mother. You failed to point out that the cases that you quoted where an ectopic pregnancy has run to full term occurred when the fetus developed elsewhere in the woman's abdomen, with the fetus attaching itself to the outside of the womb, an ovary, or the large intestine, and without the kind of modern medical science found in the first world, both the mother and her unborn child would be doomed. Yes, Geerup. Watching one of your videos and listening to your inane ramblings and bad advice could literally cost someone their life. And you have to ask why people like me give you such a hard time. When you opened your video with the news that you had had an idea this morning, we could almost hear the accompanying thrust, grunt, and the inevitable splash that came with it. And I must admit, I did have to fear the worst. But fortunately, your idea was more of a whinge and a whine than any movement within your mind. Of course, as you explained it, the wheels came off your argument as soon as you mentioned the Nazis. Surely you know that as soon as you compare your foes to Nazis, your opponent knows that the argument is over, and that you have just lost. I'm not going to sit here and be drawn into a debate about the theological beliefs of a psychopathic dictator with small man syndrome and a pathological racist hatred for anyone who didn't fit neatly into his ideal perception of racial purity and superiority, who went around showing everyone how tall he wanted to be. The fact remains that those that followed his orders, pushing innocent civilians by the boxcar load into gas chambers and then stuffing their dead bodies into ovens, were overwhelmingly Christian. And though you may not like it, it's true. Those Nazis that you compare atheists to were not cardboard cutout faceless evil characters that you see in movies or in comic books. They were ordinary people who did ordinary jobs and lived ordinary lives, who were drafted into the military to fight a war started by a madman, who had what is, by today standards, considered to be a rather unfashionable moustache, and if rumours are to be believed, just had one testicle after the other one was blown off during the Battle of the Somme during the First World War. In your video, you talk about feeling dehumanized by atheists, but in truth, dehumanization is a trick the religious have been using for centuries. Your own book talks about it at great length, about how the foes of the tribes of Israel were subhuman baby-eating heathens, bereft of humanity and deserving of either being fucked over or put to the sword. For centuries, in your country as well as mine, puritanical zealots did some truly bloody awful things in the name of Jesus to those that were accused of witchcraft, because your good book states that you should not suffer a witch to live. Something that is still observed in some parts of Africa, where truly bloody awful things are done to children, because some ignorant and backward motherfucker, thanks to some money-grubbing or snake oil-selling preacher out to line his pockets, believes that their run of bad luck is all down to some child in the village being a practitioner of the dark arts and in cahoots with demons. Every religious war in history, and there have been quite a few of them, have been fought with the sure knowledge, on both sides, that those on the other side are somehow less than human, devoid of humanity and full to the brim with evil, which of course makes it all right to insert 12 inches of cold steel into the opposition without the use of a convenient orifice, because the bastards deserve it. Of course, the favourite time-tested approach for dehumanizing your opponent, as effective in the Bronze Age as it is in the Information Age, is to pronounce that your foe is the spawn of Satan, in exactly the same way that you pronounce that all atheists are born of darkness and are children of the devil. You have to be specially gifted with a miraculous talent for stupidity and hypocrisy to make a video pissing and moaning about being dehumanized in one breath and then go on to accuse your detractors of being the fruit of the loins of Satan in the next. Seriously, Geerup, you should write some of this stuff down before you turn the camera on, and read it back to yourself just to make sure that you're not going to make a complete jackass of yourself once you hit the upload button. Personally, I don't know if I should be insulted or honoured. I mean, according to your theology and the belief system that you would have inflicted on the rest of us, Satan is the ruler of earth, and I am therefore his son. So, on the one hand, you should be on your knees kissing my arse, but on the other hand, Satan has got to be the absolute worst supervillain ever devised. Like some kind of dastardly baddie in a kid's cartoon, he devotes all of his time to giving someone constipation, a nasty rash or boils, so that they feel grumpy and might badmouth the Lord. Or like some kind of supervillain confined to his mountain lair, he devises fiendish and overly complicated plots that go on for years and involve things like corrupting priests, so that they abuse children, turn gay, or blow the church orphans fund on relentless drinks, drugs and hardcore porn bingers that somehow go unnoticed for 30 years or so, and he does all of this with careful coercion and unperceived encouragement, which seems to go entirely unnoticed by the immoral fucks carrying out the evil deeds until, of course, they get caught. And you take all of this seriously, including the invisible magician who is both himself his own sun and an abstract notion, and he lives somewhere that isn't real. And he has a flawless, though admittedly somewhat mysterious plan for running the entire universe. And you honestly believe that you can get him to amend this plan whenever you want, because you find that his plans for you are somewhat inconvenient. And according to you, I am the one who should be careful with what I'm doing because I might harm myself. Really. I have to ask you this, Geerup. Have you ever been allowed to eat a meal with cutlery that isn't made out of plastic with blunt rounded edges for your own safety? Because this is the sort of nonsensical claptrap that you tell children to get them to eat their vegetables and go to bed at night. None of it's true, Geerup. It was all made up by people who thought that goats gave birth to stripy offspring if you wave stripy sticks at them. You ask people like me to re-examine our motivations for doing what we do. Well, it's quite simple, Geerup. It's because people like you expend so much time and effort convincing people that this whole magic tale is true, sapping them of their creativity and inquiry and damaging their lives in so many different ways. But the world is changing, and thanks to things like the internet, people like you and people like me can broadcast our arguments and ideas to the world. Now this brings hope and comfort to people like me who share the same ideas as I do, who, in your country at least, often have to keep their ideas and beliefs secret in case they are dehumanized and victimized and hounded out of home and employment and ostracized from society by people like you, who in the 21st century, after man has split the atom and walked on the moon, still believe in flying donkeys, talking snakes, and the walking dead. They run the risk of having their lives utterly ruined because they don't believe in the highly bloody unlikely and the impossible. Because let's face it, that is what the supernatural and the miraculous is defined as. But you only run the risk of being called, among many other things, an idiot. But even though, in real life, people who share your beliefs and prejudices clamour to silence and demonise people like me, portraying us as untrustworthy because we don't look to a psychotic and maniacal sky fairy for our morals, I don't want you to be silenced, and for you to stop making videos. On the contrary, I want you to make video after video after video about what you believe and how you think the world should be, and how, as a member of the majority, with your beliefs represented in society at all levels, your ideas and demands are constantly thwarted by a pitiful and hidden godless minority. Because I want people to see and hear your message. I want them to listen to what you have to say and look at the world around them, and for them to see that you are in fact real, and that you really do want to drag society back to the 14th century, so that everyone can be Amish, and it can be Halloween every day. You see, Geerup, what you don't seem to realise is that society is quite happy to leave you behind. Just like all the smart kids at school were quite happy to get on with learning useful stuff that will help them get on in the world, all the while the slower kids are left to enjoy the joys of finger painting and eating crayons in the remedial class. I don't have to ridicule you. I just have to point at you and say, look everybody, here's Geerup. People instinctively know an idiot when they see one, and even those that don't will be left in no doubt when they hear the words and ideas that come out of your mouth. And both me and the rest of us will laugh, and we will keep on laughing, because if we ever stop and think for just one moment about how much people like you are holding the rest of us back in our development as a species, then we would weep. If it wasn't for people like you, Geerup, we would all have a flying car by now. And we would never get sick, and we would go on holidays to the moon and Mars and planets far beyond. We would have enough food to feed everyone on the planet, and wars fought over who is God's best friend would be a thing of the past, and humanity would be able to reach out to the stars and venture out into the universe and so safeguard the existence of our species for eternity, so that we are no longer running the risk of being wiped out by a solitary lump of rock left over from the formation of the solar system. Or some sort of god-awful virulent plague that we are powerless to stop, because the work of our scientists and doctors is limited and restricted by people who think that powdered pigeon, the aroma of cow shit, and a working knowledge of demons and satanic spirits is all that is needed to cure all ills. Or we simultaneously drown and poison ourselves and every form of life on this planet because the prevailing attitude held by those in power is that taking care of our environment isn't necessary because Jesus is coming back soon and, well, he's got it covered. For that, Geerup, for your contribution to the problem and not the solution, I can only say that you are a gibbering, idiotic, vacuous, cretinous, moronic, intellectually deficient, educationally subpar, delusional and deluded, outright fucking retard. Damn it, Geerup. I almost made it all the way through without the need to say that, but I couldn't stop myself. You see, I just had to be honest. I would say that you were a clown, but for that, you'd have to be the kind of clown called Pennywise that lives in the sewers, frightens young children, and feeds on people's minds. Now, you have a nice day, and be back here soon with another one of your videos.